It's official, the first look at the new Dungeon Master's Guide for Dungeons & Dragons 2024. And I have mixed feelings. Overall, I think it's good, but, your mileage may vary. And if the comments on my Player's Handbook video are any indication, there are very extreme opinions about this new edition. Some of you are super excited, and some of you appear to just hate Wizards of the Coast no matter what they try to do. This is something small, but it's one thing I can definitely say I appreciate about the new cover is the red spine. It still has the black splash behind the name Dungeons & Dragons, so it's going to match the 2014 books when you line them up on the shelf. But it'll also stand out because it's reverse color scheme, the black on red versus red on black. And clearly, that's a color scheme that I appreciate. But let's talk about the newsworthy part, the cover itself. Now, on the cover, we have Venger, Warduke, and Skyla. Now, I don't specifically remember Skyla from the old D&D cartoon, while I obviously remember Venger and Warduke. However, Skyla does appear in The Wild Beyond the Witchlight with the rest of those characters from the old cartoon. And of course, I do remember Skyla from the action figure line that came out back in the 80s. Overall, I'm kind of torn about the cover. I think the quality of the art is excellent. There's nothing particularly wrong with the design itself, and this is definitely the best Venger has ever looked. Venger and Warduke definitely hit the big nostalgia button for me because I loved the D&D cartoon when I was a little kid. But at the same time, it was an 80s cartoon for children, and they were never very scary as villains in that old cartoon. There were only a few episodes where Venger seemed really powerful, but he was always outsmarted by a bunch of kids, which of course is the nature of 80s cartoons. So I can't really fault the cartoon for being what it was, but at the same time, do I want these to be the characters that represent Dungeons & Dragons on the cover of my new Dungeon Master's Guide? So I'm kind of torn, and again, your mileage will vary. Now, because Venger's on this cover, and we saw this piece of art 2 weeks ago from the new Player's Handbook with the heroes from the original cartoon, and we see them here, and they have been aged up. Bobby is fully grown here. People are speculating that we're going to get a new version of the D&D cartoon, kind of like X-Men 97 has revitalized that property. I don't think that's true. I feel like Hasbro already made their decision when they sold off Entertainment One, their production studio. They'll probably shop out their IPs to other studios for those studios to make movies like Transformers or G.I. Joe. But I think Hasbro has committed that video games are going to be their big moneymaker moving forward, because it's clear that video games like Baldur's Gate that are really good make a lot more money than a movie will make. And even some video games that are terrible can still make a crap ton of money. Another thing I noticed, the resolution quality on these images is nowhere near as good as the Game Informer article that gave us the Player's Handbook preview. But I don't think that's a Wizards of the Coast thing. I think that's a matter of the website, because Mirror, who did this article, is a news site, and they have a ton of pop-ups on there. So I think they just keep lower resolution images because of the nature of their site. On the other hand, Game Informer is a video game website, so they're going to have a much better visual quality. But I explain that because I want to zoom in and read the back cover of the book. This revised and expanded Dungeon Master's Guide provides all the inspiration and guidance you need to create and run thrilling adventures for your 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons game. Inside, you'll find world building advice, a pre-built yet customizable D&D world, tricks for creating memorable adventures, hundreds of magic items, rules for player-controlled strongholds, ready-to-use maps and handouts, tips for keeping your players happy and on the edge of their seats, and other tools to help you be a great dungeon master. And is labeled a compendium for 5th edition Player's Handbook 2024 and Monster Manual 2025. The first thing that's clear from this back cover is they are still calling this 5th edition, which just doesn't make any sense to me. This has to be a decision by the marketing department, because it's very clear from the game designers that this is essentially a 5.5. There's clearly enough changes here to call this 5.5. Comparing 3.0 to 3.5, this has a very similar amount of changes to the system. So it warrants calling this a new edition, and there's really no reason not to. In fact, Jeremy Crawford has already called this a revision in the multiple videos he's done with Todd Kendrick. And everyone is reacting to this in the same way they would react to an edition change. The community is responding in all the ways that we saw people respond back when 1st edition shifted to 2nd edition, and when 2nd edition shifted to 3rd, and 3rd to 4th, and so on. Everyone is already reacting to this with a lot of the same behaviors and same accusations and same complaints. It's a new edition. Just call it 5.5. That's what it is. In fact, I think people would be reacting less and having fewer complaints if they just called it 5.5 instead of trying to contend that this is still 5th edition. Now, the other thing the back cover tells us is there is going to be a campaign setting to teach you how to make your own campaign setting, and we know that they are using Greyhawk to do that. This has raised complaints on both sides. One group of folks complaining that this is not going to be a thorough and complete campaign setting and therefore will not be doing Greyhawk justice. The other side, people don't want Greyhawk to be touched at all because they're afraid that Wizards of the Coast is going to somehow dumb down the content or change things too much, and they are upset that Greyhawk is not going to be what Greyhawk has always been. Me personally, I'm not bothered by this at all. All those old Greyhawk books still exist. No one's going back in time and erasing those. And no one's going to come and take the books out of your house if you already have them, and you can still download the PDFs as you see fit. So you can build whatever Greyhawk setting you want to build, and you can keep it as true to Gary Gygax's original vision as you want to, or you can adjust it accordingly, because that's what we've always done with D&D. There is no D&D canon, really. Dungeons & Dragons has always been what you make it at your table and how you design and interpret your world based on the campaign settings that are provided. You can mix and match any of the published content to create your own world or your own take on an existing world. That's what D&D has always been. I personally don't understand why people get so offended and so upset when changes are made to a D&D setting, or even changes are made to the rules, because ultimately, the game you run at the table is yours, and you can run it however you want to. That's the beauty of Dungeons & Dragons. So let me wrap all this up with 3 takes. If you hate Wizards of the Coast and you swear you're never going to play another WotC-made game again, I get it. I had a similar experience with Games Workshop. Back in 2008, I decided to never play a Games Workshop game again, and I sold my Warhammer 40k armies, and I've never regretted it. I've never looked back. My only regret is that I lost the photos of my urban camouflage Tau army. I'm very disappointed that I no longer have those pictures, but that's it. That's it. I've never regretted giving up on Games Workshop games. So like I said, I understand where you're coming from if you're never going to play a WotC game again. I get it. However, that's not going to stop me from covering 5.5 D&D on this channel. I will continue to cover all types of Dungeons & Dragons on this channel because that's what I designed it to do. So you'll continue to see Shadowdark coverage and AD&D coverage and history of the game coverage because that's what I designed this channel for. So my second take, if you're new to all this, don't worry. Dungeons & Dragons has gone through this kind of change multiple times. Like I said before, every time there's been an edition change, we've had this kind of reaction. People arguing and complaining and people voicing their opinions very strongly. So all of this will subside to a degree, and we'll have a group of people who continue to play 5th edition and use third-party content to do it, and we'll have a bunch of people who will move on to the new 5.5. But in the end, you are free to play the type of D&D you want to play. My third take is it's clear that WotC is trying. They are trying to win back over the fans they lost during the OGL debacle of 2023. They are trying to impress us by using this nostalgia of older editions like Greyhawk and characters like Venger and the kids from the D&D cartoon. They're using all of this to try to win back over some of us older fans. And for me, it's kind of working. I'm kind of impressed with the new edition. I'm kind of impressed with the new art choices. I'm okay with the direction things are going. And I will definitely play 5.5, at least for one full campaign, to see how much I like it. But that's also not going to stop me from playing Index Card RPG or Shadowdark or Monster of the Week or any of the other many different games that I play. And I guess this is actually a 4th take, so bonus. I firmly believe that the choice between playing OSR games and playing 5th edition or 5.5 is not a dichotomy. You don't have to sell out to one or the other. You can play both. So those are my takes. Use the comments to give me yours. And as always, thanks again for visiting the Dire Den, and I'll see you next time.